Hey, good morning, folks. This is Matthew. Go ahead and share a screen. Just kind of getting started with this second video, and I wanted to show you what I'm doing right now. I'm actually using FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And as I had mentioned previously, I'm uploading for each of you a WordPress install, okay? So, this class is very much based off of doing. You're going to be watching videos of me kind of talking about some steps, and then you're going to get in there and do it, okay? That's the best way to learn this stuff. It's the best way to learn art or design. We can talk rhetoric all day long, but until you get in there and start doing it, it's really not going to register in your memory, okay? So trust me when I say that. And you don't even have to trust me. If you took Web Design 1 with me, you understand that sometimes it requires a late night of actively doing web development for it to really sink in. And it's the same thing with WordPress, okay? Although, in my opinion, it's a little bit more friendly as far as user experience, the interface. I just uploaded the PDF. It should look familiar, okay? And in the very first PDF, the thing that I do state is that it's not a bad idea to start thinking about getting that domain. Firstlast.com, nothing outrageous, okay? And your name's not going to change, so you might as well buy that domain for 5 to 10 years. And I recently switched over to Bluehost. That's the Bluehost hosting that I'm using for my current personal website, and I also use that for the school student web hosting. Okay, I had a bad experience with GoDaddy. That was just me. GoDaddy, they were overcharging me and doing some weird things. But here's the real truth. I've also noticed that Bluehost has some odd things going on too, which is a whole nother story that we don't need to get into for this particular video. As mentioned previously, you really do learn by doing, but the best analogy I can really sort of frame for you all is that when you're learning to drive, you've probably got your mother or father or auntie sitting in the passenger seat, and they're kind of talking you through things. And then in that glove box, there is a manual. I don't know if anyone has ever looked at that manual, but there might be some really handy things in there. If you ever need to figure out, like, those diagrams for replacing a spark plug, or excuse me, like the fuse box diagram, that's really handy to check out in the car manual. Or if you need a reminder as far as what type of oil your car requires, that's going to be in your manual. But all the driving really happens from experience, but that manual is pretty handy. And the way that I've kind of formatted the reading for this class is that it's really, really heavily weighted up front. So essentially the last project 1, was pretty much half that book of reading. And this second project is the other half, okay? So I really just kind of want you guys barreling through this quote unquote WordPress manual to give you guys a good sense of things. But that being said, you're really going to learn a lot of this stuff for the most part when you're working on the WordPress install that I am currently uploading for you. And just as a reminder again, it's actually happening right now. So it takes a little while, but I'm going to be putting one of these up for each of you, okay? Please be cautious when you're in the driver's seat in WordPress, and don't make any outrageous changes. Don't press big red buttons that you're not sure what they're going to be doing or what the result will be. That's my real honest advice, because if you break the website or if you do something catastrophic, it'll cause a headache for both of us, frankly. So watch these videos really carefully and proceed with caution. So we've talked about the install. You're going to be getting your own WordPress install. We've talked about the manual. that I'd like for you guys to move through very, very quickly. With this class, there are going to be some articles associated with in respect to user experience, and just kind of I mean, this is kind of what designers do, and artists, frankly, is you're always trying to stay up to speed with technology, and really kind of getting into the habit of really, in all honesty, teaching yourself. After you graduate with your BFA, you're not going to have me setting up a website for you or giving you articles. So I really need you guys to start getting into that habit of being self-directed and finding those challenges that will grow your career. Okay. It's just something I've learned from my own experience. And by the way, my own experience in academia and like taking classes also influences the way that I run classes. So sometimes if I did take, actually, I always say I never took a web design class. I never took a web design class. That's not 100% true. I did take a web design class as an elective at San Francisco Art Institute. Gosh, I guess that was, I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago now. Anyway, it was just it wasn't a very helpful class in my opinion. It didn't even open the door a whole lot for me. But at that point I knew that I was interested in web design because I knew I had a pretty good feeling that I was going to graduate and I was going to need a job. And I, instead of working with my back, I sort of preferred to work with my mind and a keyboard. That was kind of my strategy. That might be your strategy too. I don't know. But I have a feeling that that might be something that you're interested in because you're registered for this class and you think this stuff is pretty nifty. I do too. I love this phrase right here where it says, if it is to be, it is up to me. Hard work, focus, rigor. The phrase iterates a theme of agency and self-determination. Gosh, this really just sums it all up, being an artist, doesn't it? No one's going to do any of this stuff for you. No one's going to market your work. No one's going to advertise your work. Um, uh, there aren't folks, for the most part, there aren't folks lining up outside your door to ask about your work. You got to put it out there for folks to see. You really got to put in a whole lot of work in addition to just creating the work itself. And just remember this phrase, and that's what you've signed up for, being an artist. I know I've said this in previous classes, there are much easier ways to make a living, okay? But they're just not as rewarding. The last project was mostly just kind of doing a WordPress interface overview, kind of walking you through things as far as the backend, that's WordPress backend, the backend, it's theme-based backend, all that good stuff. Also walking you through an install. So if you ever do decide that you want to download one of those Rocket themes on your own and install it, I've walked you through that process of creating that PHP database, setting up the username, setting up the password, plugging that information into the WordPress install so that those two guys are communicating almost sort of like HTML and CSS need to communicate with old school ways of web development. Well, you need the database communicating with the WordPress install. It's very, very similar. Obviously not the same, but similar. At some point, you're going to need, you already should have a personal computer. You don't necessarily need brackets 100%. I know I said, hey, you need brackets. You need brackets to do a little bit of HTML, just like work. But for the most part, your work is actually going to be done in the browser, okay? And by the way, when you don't want like 5 different windows logged into the back end of your WordPress, okay? You want one login window that's accessing your database because you don't want any crossover or crossing of the streams, as they would say in Ghostbusters. You want one window towards the back end of your website. if you have multiples, it could, dependent on your connection, and where, and your location, possibly on the Navajo Nation or Res, things could get th- things could happen, unexpected things. And what you guys are hearing in my voice is a little bit of caution that I've developed over the years, just in general with web design and development. Don't create, there's no reason to create a possible problem. Just avoid doing things like that and keep your process clean and direct. Okay. So obviously having 5 windows open creates an opening for a problem that is just not necessary. So one opening into your back end and one opening into your front end of your website, please. And also don't leave your website logged in. I think it's another good thing to mention that it's one hosting account. Okay, guys, there's one hosting account, and it's hosting, I think there are maybe at 15 students registered for this class. And so if all of those students, all of you guys are all keeping, or you're all always logged in and never logging out, I think that can be a problem. It's also a security issue. So when you're not working on your WordPress website, log out. Okay. I also want to remind you, write everything down. When I send you guys the credentials to log into your website, please write it down safely somewhere, and don't change your password. Just leave it as is. You're only going to need this for 5 weeks. Okay. So again, don't create problems that aren't necessary. Just use the password that I've given you and make sure it's written down somewhere safe. Here, like the last project PDF said 12% progress. 12% progress essentially means that you've gone in and you have an initial understanding of how to log into WordPress and where to do a few basic things, as the last video had kind of walked you through. This second video, you're actually still in the thinking and planning stage of this website development process. And you're going to be mostly working on website architecture, okay, for the next 2 or 3 days, trying to figure out how you want your website to look. So really thinking, planning, sketching, looking at precedents. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And of course, it says that here up the top: precedent and web architecture. All right. You can see we're already kind of moving quickly through all this business. Yeah, precedent web architecture. We're already at project 2, so this is another class that's going to run real fast. These are just some screenshots of FTP, file transfer protocol windows. And I've kind of, in a clever way, like this is obviously the login window where you need a host name, a username, and a password to see the files associated with your hosting account. It's exactly what I'm doing right now, guys. It's in fact the same exact program too. But when you do log in, you're going to see this public HTML. That's why it's highlighted there. You can click on that. Then I'm also highlighting the index.php here, because that indicates your home page for your website install. And I think I'm also going into greater detail here, showing you where images are located. And, yeah. So sometimes not all these templates are kind of built a little bit differently dependent on the developer, but there are WordPress install associated images, but then there are theme associated images. And that's just something that you learn through a little bit of experience when you're bombing around on the back end of a web. I wouldn't call it the back end, I guess the hosting end of a website. Okay. Sometimes I get my terminology a little bit mixed up, but generally I'm trying to be pretty consistent with my language. But yeah, this is hosting, guys. So, and the real truth is you guys don't have access to this right now, but I am encouraging you again, at some point, get yourself a domain name and get yourself some hosting. You're going to need it. Trust me, because this website that you're making, it will be here for a bit, but I can't keep all of my former students' websites up on this hosting because I'll have a new batch of students. That may sound a little bit sad, but actually it's really exciting. I've got lots of folks coming into this class who want to learn about WordPress and learn these valuable skills, but I can't keep all of these WordPress installs on just one hosting account, so I have to rotate them strategically. All righty. So that's a lot of information, just kind of catching you guys up or bringing you up to speed with kind of what I'm thinking Project 2 really represents. And again, it's very, very much focused on you guys buckling down and getting this reading done that's associated with the car manual, quote unquote. And then also doing some thinking and planning, because the precedents are all about you deciding what kind of website do I want to make? You know, what kind of website is appropriate for my professional goals? Do I want to be a graphic designer or a working freelance graphic designer within the next 1 or 2 years? And by the way, I always say this too in my classes, your career does not start after you graduate. Your career starts right now. If you think that you have some time to kind of like twiddle your thumbs and yada, 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 nope, that's just not the way this works. Artists and designers, you should be moving forward with your goals here and now. You don't have any time to waste or wait. Okay. So you need to be thinking about precedents, like web precedents. Do you want to just show your paintings and drawings? Well, then you should be looking at visual artist precedents. Do you want to be creating a sort of a graphic design portfolio? Then you need to be looking at graphic design, I guess either graphic design firm or graphic design individual precedents. So you'll have to decide that on your own. How would you do that? Well, just do a Google search. Just type Albuquerque graphic designer or Albuquerque artist or Phoenix graphic designer. Or if you're interested in how a Dene individual manages a graphic design firm, or a Dene individual manages their visual artist website, then add that as a search term and keep that in mind when you're kind of setting up your website. How are folks going to be able to find your unique website that is associated with your unique identity? Okay. So precedents are extremely important. The web architecture thing is very, very important too, because remember, this is really the thinking stage, if you ask me, when you're conceptually thinking about what your web project is going to be this semester. But at some point, you have to start doing some planning. That's what web architecture is. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to open up a new page. Let's see. And I have my web architecture using Google Drive. And so let's see, I'm using Sheets, which is part of Google Drive, right? And I have a few things going on here. I even have my tax deductions and nerdy things like that up in my cloud. Yeah, I put things up here that I really want to be safe, you know, because sometimes hard drives croak. So I don't use Microsoft Excel or any of that stuff. I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft. Frankly, I think the user experience is poor compared to Google. And so and you can see, I even opened this document yesterday. This is a document that I'm always looking at for both art, design, and web purposes. It's essentially an artist catalog showing everything that I've done my whole entire life. I know it's a little bit crazy to think that, but this document is my whole entire art career. Everything that I've ever made or done, for the most part, anything that I consider to be part of my quote unquote catalog, it's going to be on this document. But it's also a really good roadmap for a website. And so you can see there's my homepage up here. Okay. And then I've organized, and then I mean, it's pretty standard. In fact, if we look, let me just for a moment go back to this PDF really quickly. These are standard things that you would see or expect for a visual art website. It might be a little bit different different or slightly different dependent on the artist or dependent on whether it's a graphic design portfolio. But this is a pretty good beginning, like, you know, a homepage, a work portfolio page, an about page with a CV. And notice how the CV, for in my opinion, should be a child of the about page. So you're starting to look at these parent-child relationships and how everything kind of fits together. You're creating a roadmap for your website, right? And then you could even start with just like an unordered list, which is what I've done here, right? And then you can move over to a spreadsheet. And I would suggest that you use Excel, or excuse me, not Excel. No, strike that from the record. I would suggest that you use Google Sheets because that's up in the cloud. So if you have a Google account, you have a Drive account, and you can start developing this on your own. So you can see though that the way that I'm formatting things is very similar to that example I put on the PDF where there's a home page, of course. Then there's a work page. And then within the work page, I have these, I arrange my work chronologically according to year. And the truth is some artists will only have recent things up on their website. I personally don't do that. I just kind of have everything that I want the public to see up on the website. And so again, if I feel like it's worthy of being in my catalog, then that means that it's worthy of being up on the website. Okay. So I split my work into these sub-child categories by year. So 2020 to 2024. It's not even 2024 yet. So I think it reads 2023. But I have there's 2020 to 2024. And then there's another one down here, 2010 to 2014, right? And so you can kind of see under this category, then I have 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020. That's how I've done it. You might just want to, instead of having these year sort of subcategories, maybe you'll just want to say paintings, or maybe you'll just want to say illustrations or drawings or sculpture or photography. But for example, if you're a photo major, maybe you have subcategories for like commercial work, like shooting weddings or product documentation. But I mean, these are things that you should be thinking about. How are you going to present yourself to the world? I think it's kind of you have to decide. I know it's a lot to ask of you, but I'm sure you've already been thinking about this. But who are you as an artist or as a designer? Where are you going? And what pages do you need to represent that? That's what this is all about. And so let me talk about some of these headings up here that I think are pretty important. I created these sort of not rows, but these columns for input status, and that stands for SEO input status. So me kind of going in and plugging in some more important information to try to increase my web traffic. This is something new where I wanted to create process images. So I was trying to diversify some of the images on my website. And so that's why I created that column. It's essentially just a tool for me to keep myself organized and move through updating the website methodically. Okay. And that's what this is all about. This is menu / page title / H1. It's important to know that essentially the page title in WordPress is your H1. And so that's why it's really important to be very particular. And also, to hit pause for a moment. Let's say that I did want to just redesign my website or start fresh with a WordPress install. If I have a document like this, it essentially means that a lot of the work is already done because I've been working on it for years and years and years. I have an idea of what I want my website to look like. And so even if I change the look and feel of it with a theme, I still have the primary sort of architectural plan to recreate was what is already existing, but with sort of a new facade or sort of a new skin. And that's another reason why this document is extraordinarily important. It's also going to keep you organized, as I stated before. So menu, page title, H1. Yeah. So my menus and my page titles and my H1s are pretty much all the same thing. And that's why I have this column here named that way. There's also something called a slug or an H2. And for me personally, I'm using a catalog system, a catalog numbering system, because I don't want my web architecture to be like, this is actually a real long kind of title. And it's less appropriate to have up in the URL window. So I'll show, as an example, I'll show you. Let's go to this piece right here, Neob and her daughter. So I'm going to go to my website real quick. That's actually this one right here, so I can just click on it. Notice how it says MatthewBollinger.com, and then it says work, and then it says 2020 to 2024, and then it says BOL 2213. Okay, well, let's double check that. Remember, this work. (2020 to 24) 221-3. There it is. So that's the slug that is sort of stepping in place of this real long title for this painting, because I want my web I want my web URLs to be efficient and consistent. And for me, that's why I created this catalog system. So essentially that indicates that this particular painting was created in 2021, and it was the third painting that I felt like I completed that year. Okay. That's my system that I've designed, but that's also my design training coming into play in creating order and trying to make sense of things, right? But that's what a slug is, okay? And when we start creating pages, that'll make more sense. I think here's that URL. I think just having a place to put the URL is really nice, because again, when you recreate this website, you want to use the same URLs. The reason why you want to use the same URLs, or you want things to remain consistent when you're, I guess, when you're redesigning a new website for yourself, is because Google is already familiar with this URL and what's going on that particular page. And so if you just start changing URLs, Google's going to freak out, and your SEO rating is going to go down. And so, SEO is a big thing, because you want your work to be, you're developing a history with Google so that Google can point folks in your direction. That's essentially it. That's what we're talking about. And then there's also this phrase, in the web world, SEO juice. You don't want to lose your SEO juice. You want to hold on to it and even build your SEO juice. Okay. Somehow full image URLs became really important for my particular process doing web development. And so I was plugging those in, and it just says URL here and then full image URL. And then I recently created this one, process image URL. Remember, and this is kind of a new thing for me. And same with this process image sort of column here. So those two things are related. I'm kind of expanding my web architecture a little bit. And so that's also an example of how this document is a living document. It's going to change throughout the years. But if you have it up in your Google Drive, you're never going to lose it, and you can access it no problem. This is SEO. These are SEO rules. Like, so a page title tag, when you're plugging in, just information about your pages, the rules are it can only be between 60 and 70 characters. Okay. If you go over 70, that's bad. Google doesn't like it. If you go under 60, that's bad. Google doesn't like it. For some reason, 60 to 70 is the magic number. This stuff is important, okay? And if you guys really want to know the details of, Google SEO rules right now, then just simply open a new page and say Google SEO 2023. Yeah, and see, look at all these pages that are popping up. SEO best practices 2023, state of SEO in 2023, the ultimate guide to SEO in 2023, blah, 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 blah. And so you can really kind of get a sense of what the quote unquote rules are. That it may have changed. This could be a little bit out of date. And so I might have to update things. But that's why I have those rules set for myself. So I can set up my pages and you know, if you can't go up against Google, guys, don't think that you can write your own rules here. It's kind of like, a salmon going upstream. It's got to work real hard. All right, don't go against the current. Go with the current, and work smarter, not harder. More SEO data, meta description, 150 to 160 characters. And then here it says, don't go fewer than 100. I guess I wouldn't go fewer than 150, but for some reason I said definitely don't go fewer than 100. And so for me, my consistent answer to that is just simply the title and the medium and the dimensions and the date. And so I could probably expand that and improve my SEO. But you got to make decisions regarding that on your own, okay? H1, remember, is the page title. So this is almost sort of like an empty gesture right there. I did spend some time creating target SEO keywords that would be associated with the particular works of art that I was making. And so I was just kind of writing down, just off the top of my head, thinking out loud, creating SEO keywords. Okay. All right. I also think it's important to label images correctly. You can, I think a lot of artists get kind of sensitive about having their work online, and they think that someone's going to steal it. And I don't know. I mean, my personal opinion is just label your images, okay, with your last name. And for me, I also include a catalog number. And then I include some of those keywords. And remember when I was developing some of those keywords, some of those things, and you can see I haven't been all that great about it, guys. It's a lot of work. But you can continue to add SEO keyword optimized descriptions of work. Okay. I would also advise that you do a little bit of research on your own for creating web architecture. Okay. Again, this is the tip of the iceberg, folks, that I'm showing you, but I need you guys to be comfortable in the driver's seat, self-directing. Okay. You need to be a self-starter. In fact, if you're working in a graphic design firm, or if you're just, an artist, a visual artist, trying to sell work and trying to, locate grants and do all this stuff, you're not going to be able to sleep in until 10 or 11 anymore. I'm sorry to tell you that. Those days are over. You are up at 6, 7 a.m. and you are working. And even when you're out having dinner or lunch or on your bike cycling or going for a jog, you're going to be thinking about all this stuff because it's your life now. So get used to it. And that's a good thing, okay? Because I'd rather be thinking about art and design than a lot of the other things that folks are thinking about regarding work in their lives. When I first got this job at Diné College, I had a phrase that I was trying to I guess, I was trying to market the program. But, the phrase that I was using was simply design your future. Design your future. But you can't, designing your future is really tough when you're not a self-starter, when you're sort of in not even in the passenger seat, but the back seat of your own career. You really have to be in the driver's seat. You have to be humble. You have to be gracious. You have to be positive. That positivity thing is extraordinarily important, and you have to love what you do. You have to really drink it up, um, and that's my best advice for you. Now, as far as project uploads in this class, in Web Design 1, you guys could just simply upload HTML and CSS files to me. Well, I mean, you can't upload a WordPress install, but you can document and show me what you're doing with screenshots and with your words, okay? And so I'll leave it up to you, you guys. I'm not gonna, there's no right or wrong way to do it, to showing me that you're working, but I just need you to show me that you're making progress and working through screenshots that you can upload on Blackboard and through your words. Just tell me what you're doing and where you're at and what you're learning. Talk to me through Blackboard, okay? Talk to me through the visuals that you're doing. So with this particular project too, obviously you should be developing some web architecture, and you can screenshot that for me, okay? Or I guess, you could upload a PDF. You can export a PDF from this application, and you can upload it that way. It's not a big deal to me how you do it, as long as I'm confident that you're confident with your progress in this course. I'll tell you something. If you think that you're going to do web architecture 3 weeks from now, you're just not going to make good progress in this course. You need to listen to me and trust me as far as the things that I'm telling you to do in this class, because believe me, I've done this for many years, not only in my personal life, but in my professional life. And you need a plan, okay? If you start doing this without a plan, it's just not going to work. You need a good plan moving forward. You need good web architecture. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe you're only going to create, I don't know, you start thinking about the paintings and the drawings that you've made and what kind of documentation you have and where that documentation is. If you've taken a class with me, you know that I am always harping on everyone saying, you got to have a system, you got to have a file system. And there's mine right here, art design. So when I am working on a website, everything that I need that's associated with my creative process, it's always in a particular folder, so I can find everything. I can find the documentation, I can find the detail shots, I can find the process shots. And just for fun, let's see what's in here. I mean, I don't know. Okay, this is just a screenshot. If I was working, and that's just simply a screenshot. You guys, I am obsessive about documenting the steps that I am taking in my own creative world and in my studio. And it pays off down the road. You're doing it for your own future, okay? And it doesn't matter whether it's a design project or an art project. You need a project folder to put everything in so that you can find it later for projects like this. That's plenty for project 2. Project 3, we're actually going to be focused on doing some actual more in-depth work on the back end of WordPress and the WordPress theme. Although I would like to remind you that you should at the very least use the credentials that I will be sending you to log in briefly and just look around. Don't push any big red buttons, okay? Please don't do that, because it'll just make things a little more difficult for both of us. If I have to do another reinstall of WordPress for you and you have to start over, it's not going to go well. Now, I'm not saying that to make you paranoid. I'm saying that as a designer and as a working professional, you have to always practice measured caution in a certain respect. Leave the experimentation to when you're working on a painting or a drawing, but use measured caution when you're thinking about web development. Okay. That's plenty. Thank you, everyone.